Hello everyone, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG, welcome to another Commander Masterclass. In this episode, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the Spellslinger archetype. The goal is that this video will give you everything you need to build a Spellslinger commander deck, no matter what the commander actually is. So the best place to probably start is, what is a Spellslinger deck and what is it trying to do? Well, to put it simply, it's a deck that's trying to cast as many instants and sorceries as possible, and then play a bunch of cards that reward us for when we do that. Every part of this deck revolves around instant and sorceries, and apart from the lands, they will make up the largest portion of our deck. Our card draw will be on spells, our interaction will be on spells, so will our protection. Our ramp will still mostly be on permanents, but they will include effects that will make our instants and sorceries cheaper. Our win cons will either be very large instants and sorceries, or cards that reward us for when we cast them. In terms of colours, the two primary colours for a Spellslinger deck is blue and red, as they've generally always had the best spells and payoffs over the course of Magic. Meow. You could have a mono blue Spellslinger deck, and you could have a mono red Spellslinger deck. It could, if you go by just the raw numbers, be an Izzet deck. There are a couple of weird exceptions out there, but the vast majority of the time you're going to have red and blue in your deck. Blue has been the best spells colour since Alpha. You're right. May I help you? No, get down. Sorry. Blue has been the best spells colour since Alpha. It importantly has all the best cantrips in all of Magic, which is exactly what we need for our card draw. It has some of the best tutors for instants and sorceries, as well as some of the best recursion for spells. Blue also has decent spell-based interaction in Commander as well. It has a lot of cheap effects that destroy a creature and then leave something smaller behind. It has the best spell-based protection in Counter Magic, and it has some of the best win cons, in effects that make us creatures whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, as well as some of the biggest and most impactful spells out there. Red does a lot of the same things that blue does, but slightly worse for the majority of cases when it comes to Commander. Red also has some cantrips, but most of these tend to be rummaging effects, so you have to discard a card first. Its interaction tends to be on burn, and while I think people don't run enough Lightning Bolt in Commander, burn-based interaction doesn't scale as well to multiplayer 40-life formats. Like blue, red does have effects that reduce cost of spells, which is also quite nice. Red has some token makers, but they are generally not as good as the blue ones. Where red excels, though, is fun. And I know that fun is subjective, but red brings a bit of chaos and the big splashy effects to the mix. It also excels at copying spells more than any other colour, which is also a great win con. For other win cons in red, it does also have pinging effects. Generally, these are creatures that ping each player when you cast an instant or a sorcery. These are perfectly serviceable ways of winning a game and also tend to be pretty budget friendly as well. In terms of other colours, we'll talk about them as if you're adding them to your blue or your red or your Izzet deck. If you're adding white to the mix, the main thing that it gives you is the best interaction in exile effects. You also get some of the most efficient board wipes out there as well. On top of that, you also get protection on spells, but generally white leads to a more creature-based deck because of the abilities like prowess being seen all over Jeskai. When you add black to the mix, you honestly get some of the single most powerful instant and sorceries in all of Magic. Cards like Demonic and Vampiric Tutor, Yawgmoth's Will, Dark Ritual are absolutely broken. But below these types of older cards, there is a bit of a drop-off in quality or raw power level of spells. Now, black obviously does have fantastic creature removal and board wipes, but black's card draw is generally less efficient than blue, for example. Green has some of the best ramp spells in all of Magic. These are great in a spells deck as they give you more mana to cast your bigger effects. Green also gives you some ramp growth effects, which can be very helpful for getting key spells back to your hand. Let's keep things moving. Next up, we're going to look at choosing your commander. Now, if you're watching this video, you might already have one in mind, which is completely fine. But even if you do, it's worth checking that the commander you end up with does something that the deck wants and needs. A commander for a Spellslinger deck needs to, surprisingly I know, do something with instant and sorceries. It either needs to do one of these following things. It can make our spells easier to cast. Maybe it reduces the mana value of your instant and sorceries, or it generates you mana when you cast them. Alternatively, the commander could also reward us for when we cast instant and sorceries. Maybe they make our creatures bigger when we cast them. Maybe they make us a token board state. Another way you could go is maybe the commander makes your instant and sorceries more impactful. Maybe it doubles them up in some way. Maybe it gives them additional effects like rebound or casualty. Or the commander could help us cast more instant and sorceries. Maybe it draws us cards, maybe it gives our spells cascade, or maybe it lets us bring spells back from the graveyard so we can cast them all over again. Your commander needs to do one of these things in order for it to warrant leading your Spellslinger deck. So that's the commander. What are the things you need to consider when building a Spellslinger deck? Well, firstly, we need spells. We need instant and sorceries, otherwise the deck just doesn't work. There are so many cool cards that do things with them. You have spells that copy them, or make us tokens. It can be really tempting to just jam those in and worry about the spells later, but that is the easiest way to muck up this deck. In a Spellslinger deck, we want at least a third of every card in the whole deck to be an instant or a sorcery. So that means you're looking at somewhere between 33 to 35 cards. With this deck, you basically need to ask yourself, can I get this effect on an instant or a sorcery? If the answer is yes, then I would run that instead. You can't scrimp on these cards, these are the fuel for the deck. With that note out of the way, let's break down the sections that the deck needs to actually work. The The first section is our card draw section, and here you generally want somewhere between 12 and 18 bits, and the majority of this, again, you want to be on instant and sorceries. This is obviously much higher than a regular deck, and the reason for this is primarily because we want to be running a bunch of cheap cantrips and cheap draw spells. These trigger all of our spells that reward us for casting instant and sorceries, while on top of that they're drawing us through our deck to more impactful spells. Of your card draw section, I would want at least half to be these kind of cheap cantrips that replace themselves very nicely. On top of that is when you start getting your higher mana cost one-time effects on instant and sorceries. Or this is where you can start looking at repeatable effects on permanents. But again, the goal here is to have as many of them on instant and sorceries as possible. Our ramp section is next, and you're looking for somewhere between 8 to 12 bits here. The ramp section will be the biggest place where we're not running instant and sorceries. Now, there are spells that make us mana, but the issue with these is they don't scale well in Commander. We don't want mana for just one turn in Commander, we need mana over multiple turns. The best place to start here is, like with most decks, with mana rocks. Run a selection of cheap rocks that will work in your colours. Being honest, this should probably make up 8 of your total bits. With that as your base, you can start adding more synergistic options to the deck. You can run cards that maybe make you a treasure when you cast a spell, or effects that reduce the cost of your instant and sorceries. Those importantly get better if you're planning on winning by casting large instant and sorceries. It's worth mentioning as well that if you are running green, things do change a little here, because in those decks you can include rampant growth style of effects and cards. These work perfectly in the deck, because they get us lands to ramp into play, which permanently ramp us for the rest of the game. Let's move on now to our interaction section, and like with most decks you want somewhere between 8 to 12 bits here. Generally I like 2 board wipes amongst those, 2 spells that are great at resetting an overcomplicated board state. And then the rest are efficient bits of targeted removal that can answer your opponent's threats. What you run in there will be dependent on the colours of your deck, but every colour has its options. Run the best ones that you have available to you, and run a higher amount the more competitive that your playgroup is. You next have a little bit of protection, and this is here to help our board and our commander survive a dangerous multiplayer format like Commander. Like with all decks, we do have access to Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots, but ideally, we want these effects to be on instants and sorceries. Primarily, this will come in the form of counter magic. Obviously, this is where blue really shines. When picking these spells, remember that you're not planning on countering everything that your opponents are doing. It's a multiplayer format, there's no way you can do that. You're only really worrying about countering things that muck up your plans. These normally come in the way of targeted removal and board wipes, both of which are normally on instants and sorceries, so you can tailor your counter magic for that when you're using it as protection. And yes, you can also counter the thing that makes your opponent win the game, but generally focusing on protecting your own board is always the way to go. There are some other options in other colours, like black has undying effects which brings back a creature when it dies, and green and white have ways of giving your creatures or your whole board indestructible or some other kind of protection. We next have a bit of recursion to talk about. In most decks I always like running a couple of bits, and normally this comes in ways of getting back key creatures, but we are not a normal deck, we are a Spellslinger deck, and it's not creatures that we care about, it's instant and sorceries, so those are the things we want our recursion to get back. In blue there are a ton of options to either return the spells to our hand, or let us cast them again. In red and black you tend to get spells that affect all the cards in your graveyard, and in green you get effects that return a single spell back to your hand. One of the biggest sections of the deck is our win con section. Here we're going to go over some dedicated ways that a Spellslinger deck can win a game. Now, to an extent, these will often be guided by what your commander is doing, but you can definitely overlap these a little bit if you like them. The first group of cards in win cons is token makers. These are effects that make you a token board state when you cast an instant or a sorcery. These are a fantastic way of winning the game because they reward us for what the deck naturally wants to be doing. Token makers tend to work better with commanders that are wanting to cast a lot of spells, so commanders that reduce the cost of spells or help you cast the same spell multiple times or buff up your creatures in some way. And yes, you can also pick a commander that makes tokens. They're all fantastic options for these type of win cons. If you are doing a deck built around token makers, you can also run some more effects that buff up your whole team. There are some great anthem effects, either on instant or sorceries, or also on big enchantments or artifacts. These do a fantastic job of winning the game. The second most common way of winning with a Spellslinger deck is by casting some really big, really impactful spells. Things like ultimatums, things that are 6+ mana with big dumb effects. These go best with commanders that reduce the cost of your spells, making them easier to cast, or with commanders that double up your spells in some way. As we mentioned, that could be copying, that could be recursion. Another way you can go with your win cons is with damage pingers. These are effects that ping out each opponent in some way when you cast an instant or sorcery. These can be very strong and work best with commanders that want to be casting lots of spells. So in that way, they are similar to token makers. They want commanders that reduce cost of the spells, or commanders that help you cast multiple spells in a turn. The next way is by buffing up all your creatures by giving them things like prowess or pseudo-prowess. This can be very impactful, but you're probably also going to be running a bunch of token makers and then either a commander or effects that give all your creatures prowess, and then some effects that make your board all the bigger. Another cool way you can go with your win cons is with effects that copy your spells. This is definitely the most live the dream of all the win cons, but it can be the most fun. These are effects that duplicate how many times you are casting your spells. These work best in decks that are generally trying to cast larger effects. Copying a Ponder is all good and fine. Copying a Comet Storm or a Time Stretch, well, that is vibes. That means these copy effects tend to work better in decks where you're casting bigger spells. So that's commanders that reduce the cost of your spells, or commanders that actually copy your spells. On the topic of copying spells, let's briefly touch on Storm. This is one of the most powerful spell-based mechanics out there that, being honest, is very tricky to move over to Commander. If you want to do the Storm thing, all power to you, but most of the normal payoffs are harder to get working. Tendrils of Agony is only target player, and everyone starts with 40 life, not 20, and then there's multiple players to kill on top of that as well. Brain Freeze is also very hard to make work in Commander, as everyone has 100 cards in their starting deck. It is still good as a self-mill option though. If you really want to do Storm, look at bigger effects, scale it up for Commander. Cards like Elemental Eruption and Mind's Desire are more powerful and what you're after here. They are big, they are dumb, they are impactful spells, they scale nicely to Commander. In terms of combos, there are some spell-based combos that you can run. They often revolve around infinitely copying a creature that copies a spell. I'll put a link down to some in the notes. This is probably more for competitive playgroups, but they are solid ways of winning a game. So we've mentioned a bunch of options here. Realistically, you're not going to be running all of these types of win cons. You're probably going to pick the one type of win con that works best with your commander, and then top it up with a couple of other ones to make the deck more interesting. Let's round off the deck part of the video with our lands. In total, you're looking for somewhere between 36 and 40 lands here to make the deck function. For utility lands, run a couple that care about instant or sorceries, like some added recursion for your spells is always nice. If you're planning on drawing lots of cards, then obviously something like Reliquary Tower can be very solid. Cards that help with filtering are also very nice. Because of all the cantrips we're going to be running, having extra ways of scrying or surveilling in the deck are going to be very solid. Also, lands with cycling can be very nice here, as they can just move things off the top of our library. For dual lands, I would generally look for ones that enter play untapped. I just don't have the time for tapped lands anymore. There's plenty of very good budget options out there nowadays for you to look at. Then generally I want about half the lands in my deck to be basics. That does go down a little bit when you're running a 3+ color deck, but that's a solid place to start. So that covers the deck, let's go over the game plan. In the early game, what you're trying to do, like with most decks, is filter through your cards, make your land drops, and get some ramp into play. You're then looking to get out your commander or one of your win cons and enablers, like your token makers, your copy effects, those kind of things. From this point on, you should then be able to start accruing value, something that Magic players all absolutely love. While you're doing this, you're looking to protect your board. This will be where the things like counter magic come in that we went over earlier. What you're looking to do is build to a point where you can cast multiple spells in a turn. This will either be making you a large army of tokens, it'll be ramping up your storm count, it'll be giving you a bunch of value by the spells being copied, or you'll be pinging out your opponents with damage dealers. Once you have all the value in the world, no one will be able to stop you. Right, everyone, I think that's where we're going to leave it for today. I hope people found this video helpful. Spellslinger decks are really fun to play. You always have things to do, and they can be very powerful, and all around are a great archetype. If you're thinking of building a Spellslinger commander deck, do consider using our TCG Player affiliate link down in the description below. It helps grow the channel and lets us do more cool and new things. Please like, share and subscribe, all that good stuff, and until next time, I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.